It's time to review ExZeus for the PlayStation 2. Also known by its lesser known title of Counterforce, ExZeus is an arcade shooter from 2003 that's seen multiple ports over the years. From PC to the Nintendo Wii to iOS devices, the game's been re-released almost as much as bloody Golden Axe at this rate. However, we're tackling the Europe-only version made for the PlayStation 2 back in 2004 today. Why? Because I saw the game for about €1.50 in a retro gaming store and the name amused me. No, really, that's the genuine reason I'm reviewing this. It's a fairly obscure game, so it'll be interesting to see if it's actually any good. Without much further ado, let's begin! In the far distant future, the people of Earth have been forced to hide underground from the evil forces of the Daedara, who use their enormous legions of alien mecha to slaughter thousands each and every day. Eventually, humanity decides to finally fight back against this monstrous onslaught, and to this end they pool their resources into developing a trio of flying humanized mechs capable of successful retaliation. Choosing from the all-rounder male robot bizarrely named Sophia, the fragile speedster Callista, and the slow bruiser Dynamis, it's up to you to annihilate the Daedara and take back Earth once and for all. ExZeus is a 3D auto-scrolling shooter along the lines of Star Fox 64, where the goal is to get to the end of each level without dying from the constant waves of enemies to defeat the powerful war machines that lie in wait to do you in and destroy the world. You move around the screen with the left analog stick, fire bullets with the X button, which can be held to fire a powerful laser when the meter in question is filled to a certain point, lock on and fire missiles with square, quickly roll to the left or right with L1 and R1 respectively, change the camera angle with triangle, and can use circle to launch a very limited supply of mega bombs that destroy all on-screen enemies. Each level is split into two phases, the first being an on-rails shooter where you simply have to survive the swarm of Daedara, and the second being the boss battle where you dodge the latest monsters' attacks as you fire all kinds of weaponry on them in the hope of finally defeating them. After each level is completed, you go to a shop where you can use currency earned in the level to buy upgrades, restock your weaponry, and so on before getting back out into the battlefield. Since we have the gameplay pretty much covered at this point in its entirety, we should probably get started with looking at what ExZeus did badly. Because this game was primarily a port of an arcade game as opposed to something made specifically for consoles, I'm going to be a bit more generous in my judgment, though if there is anything that's particularly terrible regardless of what format it was made for, I will still bring it up. First of all, while I do like the idea of being able to upgrade yourself in between levels, the execution is very lacking for two reasons. Number one, you don't have a lot of currency to spend on refilling your stats, let alone being able to afford new upgrades, so you're kind of stuck there. And number two, as you may have noticed, you have to pay to refill your stats, and that does include health. If you don't have enough, you'll just be sent back into the next level with your weapons and health in a slightly better state than the end of the previous level, leaving you open to being killed much more easily by enemy forces. In addition, ExZeus can get pretty repetitive after a while. Its gameplay isn't anywhere near bad, don't get me wrong, but thanks to a lack of set pieces or very level designs to keep you on your toes, you'll soon end up being reduced to mashing the fire button over and over again right till the very end. However, the biggest problem with the game is its content, or lack thereof to be more exact. All you get are 3 characters that play more or less the same, and 5 levels that last about an hour at the very most altogether. There is literally nothing else. No alternate routes to take Star Fox style, no extra modes or challenges that change the mechanics to keep you going a la Outrun, and the only bonus you get from beating ExZeus is obtaining the highest score. Now, for an arcade game where you likely paid about $1 at the very most, it makes sense it would be this short. You can't have players crowding around the cabinet for ages, but when it's a console game that was priced at around $20-something when it came out, that's downright unacceptable. No game for that price should ever be only about an hour long, unless it happens to be that kind of game either good enough or filled with enough secrets hidden in replays to make you go through it again and again without complaint. And what really annoys me is that I'm actually rather fond of ExZeus, not to mention that it is a pretty good game in its own right. Even though the graphics aren't really anything special, especially given how sparse and averagely textured the environments are, it manages to stay at 60 frames per second constantly despite all the smoothly animated crap that goes on screen throughout the game. Also, can we please talk about the music? It may not be too memorable, but it's that good kind of soundtrack where the passion and energy that went into it shines very clearly through fast-paced techno pieces and incredibly silly yet very endearing 80s rock guitar melodies that make every part of the game much more enjoyable than it really ought to be. Plus, despite how short it is, ExZeus is actually a pretty challenging game that'll take a few tries to get through. And if it gets either too difficult or too easy, there's a surprising amount of customization in the options menu to change how powerful or fast both enemies and bosses are. It's very short, but it's weird how you can still get some mileage out of the game by trying out all sorts of combinations to suit your abilities. It's also helped by the fact that when you get down to it, this is a pretty good game. The boss battles are pretty decent, if a bit samey in their strategies. It stays quite exciting to play the whole way through thanks to showering loads of enemies to blast to bits, and the gameplay is rather fun, giving off a quality reminiscent of Star Fox 64. Had Star Fox 64 been composed by bloody Dragon Force of all things. ExZeus Counterforce, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is a certainly fun game with graphics that keep a consistent frame rate if nothing else, charmingly crazy techno-rock music, a good amount of challenge with plenty of customization to adjust it, decent boss battles, and pretty good gameplay. However, it's let down by a poorly implemented upgrade system, a lack of variety that makes things repetitive, and especially a very small amount of content given what they were charging for this back in the day. If you see any variation of ExZeus available for $5 or less, I'd suggest you give it a whirl and see what you think, but otherwise there isn't enough to it to make spending anything higher valid. As such, I give ExZeus a rating of actually decent. While not that great, it's a surprisingly enjoyable game, but recommended only for fans of the game's franchise or genre. I'm Father Dougal 9000, and I hope you enjoyed watching this review. Until we meet again, have a great day, y'all!